gentlemen, welcome to yet another episode of Rendezvous with Anzar Saqib on CxO Global TV. Now, CxO Global Forum is a powerhouse of all the brightest, brilliant minds around the globe, all the thought leaders, the movers and shakers of the corporate industry, a league of extraordinary ladies and gentlemen. And today as well, we're going to be talking to a very accomplished gentleman. He's joining us all the way from Luxembourg. His name is Mr. Sohail Jaffer, and he is the MD at Genesis Consulting. Welcome to the show, sir, and thank you for making time for us.
Thank you very much, Anzar Saqib, and I'm very happy to be with CxO Global Forum, which I joined 2 years ago, and I have to say that it's a major catalyst for technology, not only in Pakistan, but as global connectivity, and to showcase Pakistan, which has been very, very good.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. But today is all about you. So let's start from the very beginning. Let's talk a little bit about where you grew up. Where did this journey begin?
Well, the journey started in Karachi, Pakistan, where I was born, and I stayed in Pakistan till 1970. When I was given an opportunity to come for a place with the London School of Economics, LSE, and on arrival in London, when I saw the weather, I couldn't really take it, so I decided to skip LSE and take the shortcut, which meant that I was going to do LSE, then accountancy, then post-qualifying experience, and I went straight into accountancy and I skipped LSE, which by looking back, I would say that I do have regret that I gave up on my place for the London School of Economics in international relations. Anyway, so I did 4 years in UK, and thanks to the weather, which motivated me, I passed all my 5 exams first time. So I qualified in 74 with Shell, or an organization called Shell Mex and BP in London, which was a joint marketing company. Shell owned 60% and BP owned 40% for distributing their petroleum products in the UK. And after that, I decided to move into public accounting. So I joined a Scottish firm called Thomson McClintock for 2 years, which later merged with KPMG in 1981. And then from there on, I moved with Pricewaterhouse in Africa. So it was Libya, Morocco, and Ivory Coast, but traveled widely in Francophone Africa for clients such as World Bank, the African Development Bank, the USAID, and of course, the financial institutions like Barclays, Chase in those days, Citibank, etc. So these were some of the clients, but the main clients were really energy and mining, because those are the 2 major resources Africa has. So major mines in Zaire, copper, and then another major mine in Guinea, which was bauxite from which aluminium is made. So all these were pretty good learning experiences. In 1988, I decided to do an Indiana Jones style return to London, and found myself with a few offers, including one with Citibank. And I decided to move into Citibank and leave accountancy behind and join them in business development in the financial institutions group, which encompassed financial institutions meant asset managers, insurance companies, banks, exchanges, which meant stock exchanges, derivative exchanges, and clearing houses, etc. So that's what meant by financial institutions. Citibank in those days of the time of Shaukat Aziz had 2 major customer groups. One was called the World Corporate Group, WCG, which had 500 multinational corporations. And the other group, customer/product group, was financial institutions, which in simple language means transaction banking. So it involved custody, trustee services, cash management, trade finance, everything to do with transaction banking. But it was a global group, and so I benefited from that. And then I joined their asset management group in 1996, focused on alternative investments, which in simple English is hedge funds and private debt, debts issued by companies which are not rated, and they are bought up by bank syndicates. And so this was a large movement in the US in those days. So we structured transactions where the sandwich filling or the transaction was US private debt, and it was, size of the transaction was 300 million and distributed to institutional investors in Europe, insurance companies and reinsurance companies and banks. And that brought me to the Middle East quite often. in regards to the distribution of these alternative investments. After Citibank in 1998, I moved to another asset management company in London, which was American, owned by Zurich Insurance. And after a year with them, I decided to do something more entrepreneurial and joined a German entrepreneur headquartered in Munich. But he asked me to help him in the asset management company in Luxembourg. So I was made MD of the asset management company in Luxembourg, and I came here in November 1999. And in 2012, I was seconded to develop their bank assurance business in Dubai from 2012 to 2017. And there I came to Pakistan frequently and did a number of transactions in Pakistan, mainly distribution deals through banks. So MCB, Faisal Bank, Standard Chartered Bank, and DIB, etc., and Bank Islami, for example. So basically, we had a portfolio of 10 major banks in Pakistan distributing long-term savings plans in simple English. The word bank assurance has been coined by the French, which means the distribution of insurance products through banks, because banks have a customer base. And that is a big business in Pakistan today, where the two primary leaders, I think, are EFU and Jubilee Life.
Habib Bank is another major. Sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Sohail Jaffer, but this is very interesting. We'll come back to bank assurance, but right now, well, I'm more interested in knowing.
So basically, I'm here in Luxembourg with Genesis Consulting, which I set up in 2019, mainly focused on sustainable finance and fintechs. Why fintechs? Because fintechs I recognized in 2016, when it was still a very nascent industry in Europe, that these were going to be the disruptors for laggards in technology, mainly banks, although banks were considered to be leaders in technology. But the more medieval financial institutions, such as insurance companies, asset managers, and these were these entrepreneurs who were young. Normally, when I went to Berlin for an event, the age group was 28 to 32. And these kind of people who had actually decided not to join traditional financial institutions, but set up their own business. And they came from a technology background. So as they were applying their technology skills to finance, hence the name FinTech came around. So it's since then developed fairly nicely. Every country has its own national group, like you guys have in Pakistan. Here in Luxembourg, we have the Loft, which is partly government sponsored, partly private sector initiative with about 30 different companies under one physical facility, umbrella, if you like. These are small firms with 4 to 10 people initially, and they're incubated in this facility. And after 2 to 3 years, they go out and develop their business outside of this umbrella. So I think that this is where I see an opportunity. I mean, technology is a common denominator, not just fintech and finance, but whether you take the health sector, whether you take agri-tech, whether you take telecoms, this is the common denominator and the way forward. And all the pandemic has done over the last 3 years is accelerated that change. E-commerce in Pakistan was not very big, but now it's making significant inroads, e-commerce, which in the Middle East has now become pretty big in the UAE, for example. I mean, e-commerce has been there in the United States and Canada and Europe for a long time. Amazon is one great example of it, the platform Amazon. So I think that that is where the future lies. I mean, technology is the heart of things. I mean, we see that being applied to cars now with, you know, no drivers, and things like that, I think is going to develop. I think where technology has still got to make an impact is in the field of agriculture, which in Pakistan is still early days. The health sector, which whilst there have been initiatives in Pakistan in the health sector, but more can be done. And I think that one of the issues in Pakistan, particularly, is that we don't have a lot of venture capital financing and technology entrepreneurs willing to nurture the talent that we have and coach them and mentor them and bring them up to a level which is then they can expand their business. At the moment, these are relatively small organizations struggling to raise capital for their next phase of development. That's what I would say of Pakistan, having read the FinTech Ecosystem of Pakistan report as well, which is lying on my desk here.
Right. So I'm sure you heard about Airlift exiting Pakistan recently. How would you evaluate the situation there? And what other challenges lie for the startup ecosystem to flourish in Pakistan?
I think what we need is a bit like, in Islamic finance in Malaysia, the government was the main driver of Islamic finance in Malaysia. And we need a government initiative. I mean, one of the things, for example, I toy with the idea is you could have tax exempt technology bonds issued by the government. The proceeds raised from the bond offerings, which can be bought by pension funds, corporates, and by financial institutions, can then be used, the pool of capital collected can be used to nurture the technology sector, not just in fintech, but broader segment, including the manufacturing of semiconductors, which there's a global shortage right now. And Pakistan really has the talent, but unfortunately, the infrastructure and the investment initiatives which are required for businessmen to basically get involved and engage in this development is lacking. Yeah, partly is due to the top leadership in Pakistan, which at the moment is in a stage of flux, and partly there's been no consistent game plan to develop this business. Yeah, but I'm not saying everything is bad in Pakistan. I think Pakistan, for me, despite the fact that I live outside of Pakistan, I do have a lot of friends and family there, and I am connected. And I think that Pakistan, the talent is there. The people are hardworking, diligent, smart, and we can see that what they've been able to achieve with limited resources, with blackouts and electricity cuts. And despite that, Pakistan continues to produce a GDP of between 3 to 4%. Yeah, which it could do a lot more if they had the right, shall we say, landscape to go forward with.
Absolutely, an enabling ecosystem. So moving back to bank assurance, now there's a lot of popularity that it's gained recently, especially in the context of South Asia as well. What do you see are the merits and demerits of bank assurance?
I mean, the merits are that the aggregators, which are namely banks, because we don't really have that many brokers in Pakistan, unlike UK, where you have mainly a broker-led distribution called IFAs, Independent Financial Advisors.
Absolutely.
So I think that in Pakistan today, the banks are the main, shall we say, distribution channel for these products. The other possibility would be telecom companies thinking outside of the box, and platforms like Amazon, if there were one in Pakistan. These would be the alternative distribution channels, but the main distribution channels remain either the direct sales force of the insurance company, which then is not bank assurance, or banks, which is then bank assurance. And you have a host of banks in Pakistan, but obviously there are a handful which control roughly 70 to 80% of the market. Yeah. If you take Habib Bank and you take MCB and you take another 3 banks, they control roughly 60% of the distribution in Pakistan. Yeah. So I think that the distribution of insurance products through banks is not a new thing. It's been there for ages. But what is new is the technology which is being applied in the distribution of these products. By technology, I mean, for example, that you could have everything or a long-term savings plan to be distributed on an iPad, so that the issuance of the policy, the maintenance of the policy, the investments in which the monies are put into are all on the iPad for a sales guy to engage with the customer. And he doesn't have a paper-based trail to struggle with. Everything is automated. And that is where I think it's the enabler and the differentiator. The other thing about bad thing, as you say, about bank assurance is that as bank assurance is a commission-led business where the bank expects to earn a commission for distributing the product, the life insurance company or the insurance company expects to make money as well. And the problem there is that sometimes these commissions have been rather high. Now the SECP has brought in rules in Pakistan which have capped the amount of commission the banks can earn. And in that sense, it's a good deal for the consumers. Yeah, it may not be such a good deal anymore now for the banks to be, earning a very high commission. But over time, I think the banks will realize that if they're in the long-term business, that it's probably better to serve their customer in a sensible way, and most banks have fallen in line with the new requirements from the SECP. So I think that overall, the major issues in emerging markets in bank assurance has been mis-selling, selling insurance solutions to customers who don't understand what they're buying initially. And then when they wake up after 6 months and they realize there's no money on their account because most of the money has gone to pay the commission. Okay. So I think those sort of games are now few and far between. The UAE, for example, has brought in very, very strict rules on two things. One is capping the commission to the banks. And number two is what we call customer profiling or risk profiling the customer. And more importantly, the suitability of the solutions that are offered to the customer based on the needs that were profiled. And all that has to be automated, and an audit trail has to be available to the regulators, auditors when they come in. So that I think is a good thing. Maybe it's overkill now, going from one extreme when commissions were as high as 8% to now commissions are now 4%, capped at 4%. Countries like Malaysia, which has been in the lead business, they did this back in 1990s and late 1990s. They'd already realized that that was the way forward. But Malaysia is a very small country, 30 million people. Pakistan, on the other hand, is 220 million people. Yeah. Even with your ID card, Nadra, you can have it electronically, not only to pay bills, but you can also buy simple basic insurance on a daily basis. Yeah. People don't have so much money because Pakistan, the insurance premiums generally are collected annually, not on a monthly basis like in Europe. Yeah. Right. So as the premiums are paid annually, it's a lot of money to be paid annually, and the middle income class struggling with inflation, the rupee devaluation right now, is a bit hard put to start spending money on such, shall we say, luxuries. So it's really, the bank assurance is for a middle income consumer segment, which is already under pressure, not just in Pakistan, in many countries now since the war started in Europe in February this year. Inflation here in Luxembourg is now running close to 10%. Yeah? And the energy prices have gone through the roof, like in your country. Yeah? So I think it's everywhere. I mean, the people don't realize, they think that Pakistan's problems are somewhat special. I agree with you. But I think that the common denominator is across the world right now. The shortages of materials, semiconductors is one of them. Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree. And some very pertinent points made. Now let's talk a little bit about your advice for mid-career professionals who want to upskill themselves these days. What do you think are some of the most important points for them to remember?
I think the mid-career professionals from Pakistan who are talented, most of these guys generally go to become accountants, actuaries, doctors, and etc. This is where they normally gravitate towards. But the young generation today, I think they're realizing that they don't want to have this kind of lifetime employment, and they'd rather start something themselves. And given the fact that technology is pervasive, a child of 3 years old, I see in a restaurant holding an iPad and working on all the cartoons and animated things. I think what I'm saying to you is that technology has become so pervasive that the young entrepreneurs are accustomed to technology today. Technology might sound a big word, but at the end of the day, it's computer programming. It's about, the fact that you apply certain programs, develop new solutions for problems which are already in the market, and you're trying to solve those problems. Financial institutions have been a bit slow in solving those problems, hence the arrival of fintechs, who are disruptors. Some of these fintechs will eventually be swallowed up, i.e. bought up by the financial institutions who were lazy to do something themselves, but they will buy the business. Just like pharmaceutical companies buy an invention of a drug done by two people, and then they buy the rights outright, they pay $100 million and buy it, and then they make billions on it. Yeah. So that's what we call the intellectual property of the drug. Yeah. So similarly here, I think the advice to the mid-career professionals would be, number one, that they should really qualify in the field of computer science and technology. And in other words, get a degree, get experience, maybe not always in Pakistan if they can't get it, and go to Canada, go to other places, Australia, UAE, or wherever in markets where opportunities are there. get some experience, and then head back after 5, 7 years to Pakistan. Yeah, where I think Pakistan is an economy, in my view, where you can make a lot of money. Hence, when you look at the entrepreneurs in Pakistan, they have properties abroad, but they always come back to Pakistan because that's where the money is made. Yeah, not abroad. Okay, their roots are in Pakistan. The DNA is Pakistan.
Yeah, makes Pakistan beautifully. But now let's rewind back a little. And if you could narrate any one incident in your life that shaped the professional that you are today.
When you look at my career, I mean, I've done different things. I mean, I qualified as a boring accountant or auditor, which is the most boring thing you can ever do. And from there, I moved into banking. Banking is a big word, joining Citibank, where I knew nothing about banking coming out of Africa, even though you can say I was an audit partner at Pricewaterhouse. But that was a different ballgame, moving geography, moving the focus from auditing to banking or business development in transaction banking. And it was not about finding new customers, but it was coming up with new product solutions. And what I developed was a program for capital guarantees for volatile products like managed futures funds, hedge funds, etc. Or structured products, let's call it in simple English. Yeah? So I think what I'm saying to you is that I had a complete change from doing auditing for nearly 12 years, and then more than 12 years, and then moving into the field of banking. And then from the world of banking, moving into asset management, partly with Citibank, partly with an external manager, which was owned by Zurich. And then eventually coming into the world of insurance, life insurance and bank assurance. So all the things I did, looking back, were new things each time. And I took on a new challenge, not knowing a lot about the business initially, but keen to assimilate and learn as quickly as possible, which is what I did. I'm not an actuary by background. So you can say, well, life insurance means you have to be an actuary. You don't have to be an actuary. The main thing is you must have common sense and ask the right questions. And if you ask the right questions at the beginning, you can save yourself a lot of hassle at the end. Yeah. You have to know what we call due diligence. You know, you have to look at a problem and try to solve the problem and discuss with the team or with the client and come up with the best optimum solution. But you must have, one thing I learned at Citibank is there's no substitute for common sense. Yeah, you could be a whiz kid, you could be PhD, but I've seen many PhDs in my life for the last 45 years, and not all of the PhDs, I have to say, are whiz kids. Yeah, many of them are introverts. Many of them can't even articulate at a meeting, forget about a conference. At a meeting, they can't even articulate there. They're very awkward to talk to. And if they talk, it's all in mathematical lingo. Yeah, so unless you're a mathematician yourself, you can't follow those guys. Yeah. I'm not trying to be critical. I'm not saying all the PhDs are bad. I'm saying PhD is important, but up to a point. Today, what's required, the skills is technology, multilingual skills. That means you must be able to speak more than 2 or 3 languages. Here, the average number of languages spoken in Luxembourg by one person in minimum is 5. Okay, because there are 3 official languages, not official, but three normal languages: German, French, and English. Luxembourgish is the local dialect, which the Luxembourgers speak, but no one can really understand them unless you are born here. And then you have a large Portuguese and Italian community. So those guys, of course, speak their native language. Hence, you have 5. Hence, all the call centers for major companies are located in Luxembourg, because an average person speaks between 5 to 7 languages.
Right.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up for today, I have one more session, 1 or 2 more questions to ask of you.
Sure.
For one, are you reading any book currently that you would recommend to the audience listening today?
I think the books I've read is mainly business-related books, like things like Toyotas and like Steve Jobs. I mean, things like that, which I think are important to read, because that's where the future is, about how, Elon Musk, for example, coming from nowhere, is now Tesla he has created. Yeah. So when you look at entrepreneurs like that, who were failures in academic world, but great success in the business world. So today, I think we have to find a balance. No longer does the academic world mean that you're going to be a brilliant person. If you look at number of business entrepreneurs in Pakistan, not all of them went even up to the level of metric, for example. Yeah, some of them did, and most of them didn't initially when they came from India when the partition time. But they are successful business entrepreneurs. Yeah, it's in their genes. Yeah, so I think the point is that academic baggage is important, but we should not overplay that. More important is realizing what is it that you want to do in life, define the objective, and work towards it. Yeah. Don't get distracted by noise on the left and the right. If you've decided that this is your objective and you're clear about your objectives and you know the means to achieve them, then you will, inshallah, be successful. There's no question about it. Yeah.
It's been an honor and a privilege speaking with you. Please keep contributing
Not at all.
to knowledge economy.
Not at all. And so thank you very much. Yep.
Pleasure's all mine. Before we wrap up today, I'd like to ask you to quickly sum up, what do you think is the utility of forums like CxO Global?
Sorry, the utility of CxO Global?
Right.
Okay, I would say the utility for me has been over the last two years that I've been a member. One is the connectivity with different people, not only in Pakistan, but the events they host outside of Pakistan, bringing experts to link up with. So the first word is connectivity, both within Pakistan and beyond. The second is the expertise that they have. You can tap into it, find out who's the expert in a particular field or particular area, whether it be Islamabad, Lahore, whichever city, Karachi, you know. So I think in that sense, it's very good. It also alerts you to good things which are happening in the industry, and whether they be tax changes, whether they be banking changes or regulatory changes, you know. For example, recently I read about, you know, okay, it may not be directly related, but Toyota has stopped certain lines of production in Pakistan because of shortage of materials. And so I think it's always good to remain connected with Pakistan economy. And I think the CxO Global Forum has hosted, mashallah, a number of events which have been very useful. There's also a center which is being built in Islamabad, if I'm not mistaken, which will be a great place to have and a showcase. What I think CxO can go beyond this is to engage with people like Amazon, Facebook, Google, and have a session with one of the, you know, shall we say, leading lights from these organizations, or even Tesla, and bring them into a Zoom or whatever platform you guys use, and have that for half an hour, because busy people don't give you more than 30 minutes. Yeah. So I think that that would be good to reach outside to these entrepreneurs and to share their knowledge and expertise with the grassroots in Pakistan and beyond. Because the CxO platform is no longer limited to Pakistan. I don't view it as Pakistan centric. I view it as being Southeast Asian centric. Yeah. So it is a bigger platform. Yeah.
Thank you very much for those comments.
And thank you for your time. I really appreciate here. And let's stay in touch. And I really appreciate all the work that CxO Global Forum and the team is doing. And I wish all the fintech entrepreneurs in Pakistan a lot of success. I mean, there will always be successes and some, shall we say, not failures, but some setbacks is the right word. But never, setback is also a lesson. You learn from that lesson and then you try to improve on it. Yeah. I mean, when you look at the career of Steve Jobs and others, Microsoft, Bill Gates, they were not all successful on day one. Yeah. They started in garages, they worked their way up. Okay. So I think you can say, you can take inspiration from that. So I think, thank you very much for your time. And I really appreciate this call of yours today, and give my best to your team and the CxO leadership. All right.
Thank you very much for your time. And ladies and gentlemen, that's all for today. Please keep watching, keep us updated with your comments and feedback, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you very much. Take care. Have a nice day. Have a nice weekend. Bye.